Supergirl has a premiere date. More Marvel TV and X-Men news. Dune Prophecy releases a trailer, and box office shenanigans begin again. All that and more on this week's Multiverse News. Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for information about all your favorite fictional universes. My name is Matthew Carroll, and with me on the panel today are all of our good friends, Haley Hobbs. What is happening, Haley Hobbs?
Oh, it's the day we bring the news you want to hear.
That's right. And J. Scotty St. Clair.
Yo, yeah, it's all good here, just trying to beat the heat, and I'm not referring to all the piping hot news nuggets we got.
No, you don't want to beat that at all. You want to rub up against it a little.
Something like that.
And Jay Sisson, what's happening, man?
Oh, not too much. Just happy to be here with you guys on a Tuesday night. Ready to talk some news.
Always a good Tuesday when we all get to be here together. Well, first off, as always, we're going to start the show with a 5-star review from Apple Podcasts. We have It's DJ Dave says, if you're looking for the one-stop podcast to catch up on all the news from all over the universes, then this is the cast for you. Marvel, it's here. DC, all over it. Harry Potter, damn straight. Always leaves you with a smile on your face. What Sir Mix-a-Lot should have said is, I like tiny butts, and I cannot lie. Stay classy, Multiverse.
That's what you call a review. Right there.
That's how you do it.
Sorry about setting standards
for that 5-star review.
Yes, we give you 5 stars. It's DJ Dave. Good stuff.
Well, before we start, I have a confession to make. Can I treat this like a confessional booth?
Yeah, we're not just going to tell this to anybody, Jay. Just
when was your last confession?
Just us four.
Last week, I may have gotten fooled by a fake account on Twitter that the Agatha All Along trailer would release last Friday, and then we said it like it was fact. But my original plan was just to, ignore it and then pretend like it never happened. But I feel like I should probably mention it. That, even some of us news hounds sometimes get fooled by the fake news.
True. Does your soul feel clean after the confession?
12 Hail Marys, and then you'll be good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
12 Hail Hydras, then you'll be good.
There you go. So much better.
All right, well, first up in the news, Millie Alcock will show us her superhero landing when Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow premieres on June 26, 2026. Other than Sasha Calle. Calle.
We added that in, sorry.
Right, yeah. Hey, why are you adding hard to say names in without telling me?
We're trying to be accurate, unlike Jay.
Okay, Sasha Calle. That is not how you spell Calle. I disapprove, Sasha.
Hey, it's a Spanish thing. It's the 2 L's make a Y sound.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not cultured.
It's not Y, it's Y.
Go do your Duolingo and come back.
Calle? Is it? Sasha Calle?
Calle.
Sasha Calle. Okay.
Like tortilla.
Like yippee-ki-yay?
Like yippee-ki-yay. Like
Sasha Calle.
Sasha Calle, motherfucker.
That's 2 F-bombs from Jay.
Welcome to the party, pal.
No, the first one wasn't on the recording. It didn't happen.
Oh, man. Okay, here we go. Let's start over. Millie Alcock will show us her superhero landing when Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow premieres on June 26, 2026. Ooh, 6262. Or 6226. That's a palindrome, people, right?
Ooh,
palindrome.
Yeah, it is.
Ooh, good call.
Yeah. Other than Sasha Calle's portrayal in The Flash, this means we'll see Superman's cousin Kara Zor-El on the big screen for the first time since 1984. The film will be released just a year after we see James Gunn's vision for the Man of Steel himself. The citizens of Metropolis and beyond don't seem so far away now, do they?
They certainly don't. Ever since we got the addition of Craig Gillespie, I've been even more excited for this property than I already was. And, thinking about the landscape of the DCU, I think, June 26, 2026 is a pretty solid release date. It'll be roughly about a year after we get our formal introduction to the DCU with Superman coming out July 11th, 2025. And then we'll have, Creature Commandos coming out sometime in late 2024. Peacemaker Season 2 sometime late 2025. So, yeah, I think this bodes well. Millie Alcock, Supergirl, will make her debut in Superman. Again, we're not really sure what kind of capacity she's going to show up. Some people are thinking it's going to be a lesser role. I don't think it'll be main character status, but I do think she'll have a significant role because she was such an important addition before filming went underway. But yeah, also, we got to consider Muschietti's Brave and the Bold. The mention of the Flash here in the last time we saw Supergirl. We haven't really talked a lot about, the Flash and the impact that it will have on the DCU. Obviously, they want a really clean break, but it still kind of surprises me that Muschietti's attached to this thing. But, that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about Supergirl, and I love all of the talent attached to Supergirl, so I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think just zooming out on the DC studios as a whole, like past DCU, they've still got Joker 2 coming up as well, and the Batman Part 2, and the Penguin. So it's kind of interesting to think about this slate that's really shaping up. You have a whole universe launching with major characters, Superman, Batman, like the characters that you want to build the whole thing around, and that's interesting. But then you've also got these Elseworlds properties, which are big, like the Joker movie made $1 billion. Joker 2 is going to do really well, you would expect. The Batman did great in theaters, and people are really interested in the Batman too. So I think there's a lot of it's interesting. I think you could look at it in a negative way, and you could say, well, they're competing and they got these, but I don't think you have to. I mean, I think that they're spread out enough, and I think most people who are fans of these things can sort of differentiate between what we're looking at. But I think it's just really interesting to see the slate shaping up here and starting to get its feet out from under it. I do think that leading off the universe with a Superman and then Supergirl does, on the surface, kind of seem a little odd that you would have two very similar characters kicking off with. But I think too, you can probably do enough to differentiate those two. You can probably do enough to say Superman is sort of this type of character and Supergirl is this very different type of character. And I think James Gunn probably can do that, especially with the comics that we've sort of heard from him that he's going to use as inspiration for these do seem to be very different types of characters. So I think it's exciting. I mean, I think the road ahead for DC Studios, as we're starting to see the vision take shape, I think it's bright.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all in on this. I'm just excited to hear a studio starting to really roadmap what they're doing, and it's sounding really realistic and like it's going to happen. I've been frustrated these last few years with Marvel, and so if DC could sweep me off my feet at any point, this is the time. I think a lot of fans are looking for a good contiguous universe that'll have a lot of connection, and if nothing else, and it's coming from James Gunn, so I'm always in for a James Gunn film, and then the fact that it's going to have strong connection right off the bat. They're not even building up to the connection; they're just jumping in. Obviously, there are pitfalls to that too, but it's got me excited for DC in a way that I don't know that I have been for a long time. So, pretty pumped.
Definitely. So, not to shock and awe everybody, but I started watching House of the Dragon this weekend. And I know. The glass actually just burst in my house. No, I've enjoyed it a lot, and I've really liked Millie and her portrayal of Rhaenyra, and so I understand what James Gunn saw in her and why he wants her to play this role. And as much as people are focusing on James Gunn and all of this about it, I'm really excited about the women he's casting in his projects because they're all actresses that I like to watch and that I admire. And I think that we're going to see hopefully a more strong female push in his DCU where it always gets left in the dust for the most part. It seems like if you look back on DC, it's not to knock the films or anything. It's just an observation that this is how it's been. And I think that these are efforts we're seeing to change that, and I'm really looking forward to this. I wanted to start reading these comics this week, and I just haven't had time.
I think that's a really good point and a great perspective. And one thing that you said, Jay, that kind of my ears perked up to is, thinking about Superman and Supergirl being the first characters that we focus on. We got to keep in mind this first phase is called Gods and Monsters. So I think it is fitting if you're focusing on godlike characters. And again, I don't know if I'm ready to see, Supergirl be depicted as a monster or really have a deconstruction of the character like that when we haven't really had, a fully fleshed out version of the character on the big screen in quite some time. We have heard that this is going to be a darker version of the character. So I wonder if they're going to play around with that at all. Our gods could be our monsters as well, So.
Well, and James Gunn is really good at character work. Like, he's earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to like developing characters and developing backstories and dealing with multiple motives. I mean, watching the Suicide Squad or watching Peacemaker or Guardians, obviously, like he's earned the benefit of the doubt in that respect. So I think you got to trust, I think, in some level that he can bring it when it comes to bringing the motivations and the characters and the backgrounds and all that type of stuff that we like this type of content for, that he can handle that really well and with care.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Zara Zor-El is hard to say.
Kara.
I think I said Zara when I read it earlier.
You did.
Wouldn't someone correct me? I knew it was Kara too.
I was too busy prepping myself for my take.
Scotty was like in the zone.
It's like an elementary school where you're reading on page 17 and you're already counting ahead and just reading your page.
Sorry, I know we've gone off track a lot, but I used to, the teachers would never call on me to read because they knew I wanted to read, so I would pretend to not be paying attention. I knew exactly where we were, and they would I knew that they were going to try and catch me off guard, so I was like, oh, you think I'm off here in La La Land, but I know exactly where they are, so they call on me, and I'm like, boom, don't miss a beat.
You're like, you want to go, Mrs. Smith?
Something like that.
That's great. That's great. Okay, moving over to the competition here. From Marvel. In a move that seems telling of the new direction of the MCU, the Marvel television banner has been reintroduced and will be used for live-action series such as Daredevil, Born Again, Agatha All Along, and Ironheart. The banner was previously used for MCU-adjacent shows Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Cloak and Dagger, and others. Brad Winderbaum, head of TV, streaming, and animation for Marvel Studios, said the idea is to let audiences know they can jump in anywhere in the MCU and still understand what's going on. Winderbaum also alluded to a Marvel Studios rebrand that encompasses Marvel Television, Marvel Animation, and Marvel Spotlight. Could this be the death of our sweet, hot, wet, deep continuity?
I don't think so. I wouldn't look at it like that. I mean, I wouldn't take it in that sense as a negative thing. I think this is the right move. Whenever we saw Disney Plus become a thing, it was coming off the heels of Endgame. There was a lot of hype around the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you had this pitch to us, the viewers, that the shows would be can't miss. Like, you had to watch the shows or the movies wouldn't make sense. Like, we heard Feige say that, and those early shows were like that. Like, WandaVision was pretty necessary for understanding the next steps, especially like Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. And same thing with like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, that was kind of sold as like, hey, this is going to be the next step to see this taking of the mantle of Captain America on a new character. You're going to have to watch this for that next thing to make sense. And we're going to give it the big budget, and it's going to feel like you're watching a 6-hour movie or whatever spread out over multiple parts. And it's just kind of clear that that didn't really do what they wanted it to do, that people didn't really come from the theater, the Endgame theater specifically, to Disney Plus to watch all of the shows. And so it sort of worked in reverse, where I think a lot of people felt, and a lot of it was just because there was so much content. I mean, you think about all of the shows you've watched on Disney Plus that are Marvel. Like, sometimes I lose track. Like, I forget about Hawkeye, and I forget about, like, you forget about some of these other ones, and Werewolf by Night, and all of these different things. And so to me, whenever I see that, I see this as a way to reach the consumer. It's a way to say, look, we know you probably went to the theater and saw Endgame. You probably heard about Disney Plus and you watched a little here and there. Maybe you caught WandaVision. Maybe you caught, Miss Marvel or something. But you're missing a few of those shows. Don't feel locked out. Like, don't feel like you can't go to the theater anymore. Don't feel like you're missing a key, like, cog in the machine that's going to throw you off. Because I think a lot of people sort of felt like that. Like, hardcore fans are probably, like, if you listen to this show, you probably saw everything. You're probably a fan. But, like, you got to think about the wider base of people. You got to think about, like, your friends who are sort of fans. Like, you got to think about them, and they probably didn't catch everything. And so it's kind of
filthy
like
casuals, Jay.
Right, but that's the majority of people. And so there's a middle ground there where you have to find, where you can't necessarily pitch as like everything is essential. You have to be like, because not everybody's going to want to see everything. Like, Agatha All Along has musical elements to it, and that's going to really be something that people want to see. But there's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to be interested in that. And then, like, maybe if you watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it was like more of a spy-based thing. And then if you watch Werewolf by Night, it's more horror. Like, and I think that's what he was trying to say, was like, we're exploring different genres, we're doing different things. You can pick and choose, you can kind of get your things here and there, you can watch stuff you want to watch, but still come to the theaters because you're not shut out. The stuff is going to make sense. But overall, I think this is a good move. I think it's a necessary move, though, ultimately.
I feel the opposite. I think that this will not matter at all to casuals. Like the idea of separating them a little bit matters, but like the banner rebranding, like none of them are going to notice. You know what I mean? Like,
that's true. Yeah,
it's people like us.
Yeah,
that. The people like us are going to be following and go, oh, there's a different banner. What does it mean? People like that are like, oh, it's a Marvel show. Like, those are the same people who were confused about all the different, who were confused when Madam Web comes out. You know what I mean? Does this come from Endgame? You know what I mean? Like that whole thing. Spider-Man's in Endgame. Is this spider character part of that? You know, I think this story is pretty meaningless. I just kind of get annoyed at these rebrandings because it feels like they're putting out as many brandings for their labels as they are content right now, and that's just an annoying place to be. It's like, hey, this is Spotlight, now this is Marvel Television, the next thing's going to be a special presentation, there's like 6 different Marvel brandings right now, and I'm like, and they're not saying they're separate. They may be saying they're going to be less essential, but they're saying they're all still MCU. So to me, it just doesn't matter. Just put it under something, and I don't really care about this, I guess. I passionately don't care about this.
I thought you would passionately care.
The damage, so to speak, might already be done. I mean, you might already have audiences that have already been like, well, I mean, I kind of saw Endgame and then I was done, you know, or whatever.
Right.
Like, there's a 40 hours of content out there I don't have time for or whatever since Endgame or something.
In the article, it said like there will still be connection to the universe. Like, it's not disconnecting these properties. It's not saying they're a different universe.
Oh, for sure.
It's just giving them a label, which to me doesn't matter. I mean, the level of connectivity matters and how they connect matters. So we'll just see. Like, all I care about is how the properties come out. I don't care about the branding at all.
But see, that feels contradictory to me. To say that they will connect, but that you don't have to watch everything is kind of a contradictory statement. This feels to me like, I mean, Marvel came out with Disney Plus right before the pandemic. We've beat that horse so dead. But now it feels like they're swinging really far the other way, and they're overreacting. They didn't know what they didn't know when they launched everything on Disney Plus, and they were coming off of the Endgame hype. I mean, it was a natural thing for them to do, I think, what they did with Disney Plus. It was a natural progression to them for the next phase of the MCU, but it backfired. So now I just feel like this is an overcorrection, and it's kind of like you said, not everybody's going to pay that close attention to it. Like, my friends who like Marvel stuff, but they just don't have time to watch everything. So why does it matter then if it is or isn't connected, I guess? Yeah.
Well, saying it's not connected or saying it's not in the same universe versus saying it's essential is very different things. I mean, this works in comic books too. Like, you'll have a small character story who doesn't affect the big event, or maybe they drop into the big event, but there's a little text box that tells you everything you need to know about that character. You know what I mean? Like, that's that comic book thing that's always been the way. And what annoys people in comics is when they make the crossovers. They make every part of the crossovers so essential that everyone gets lost in the shuffle. That was the big thing in like the 90s with the big crossover elements in comics. They were like, oh, now I have to read 15 books to understand what's going on, you know, instead of just having the big event be the big event book. And I think that's the model they should follow for this. If they want to keep their fan base around, they need to make the movies the big events and make the shows things that flesh out the world. Daredevil's connected to the MCU. They talk about Thor. They talk about the events. The whole events of Daredevil are spun out of the Battle of New York. But like, you don't need to see Daredevil to understand the next Avengers movie. You know, even to understand him popping into Spider-Man, you're like, oh, hey, that's Daredevil from comics. You could have never seen the Daredevil show, and just kind of like, that lawyer who caught the brick, I'm interested in him. You know.
But does all of that exist without the beginning? I'm kind of ambivalent about it as well. I'm just kind of finding it to be a very interesting choice on their part. And we've talked about this as they've dropped these different kind of brandings. It's like, would you be this way if your whole other 23 films weren't built on all this connectivity. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's a 180 kind of from what they said the MCU was supposed to be. And it's okay to change things because it's been so many years.
I definitely think there's a lot of changes happening. I just don't think this branding means that necessarily. I think it does mean they're not wanting to dilute the Marvel Studios brand because they want, I think of Netflix and like in like whatever 2016, everything that had Netflix branding at the beginning, that Dune, I was like, this is going to be a great show. And now it's on every crappy reality show, and I think the Netflix brand is shot. You know what I mean?
Hey, don't talk about Love is Blind like that.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you, Jay. I almost said it, but I didn't want to offend anybody.
You offend me.
Jay's ready to offend. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been brought up. I am of two minds of it, on it rather. My mind did kind of immediately go to the whole comic books of it all. I am reminded of, very similar times, right before an event like Secret Wars, you've got all these various universes that have people confused and are not sure about which character to follow. And then you have this event to kind of mash them all together. So this does kind of feel like, a similar paradigm shift for the Marvel Cinematic Universe as it's, continue to expand and grow and become more and more like the comic books. But I'm not overly concerned about the impact that it's going to have on the continuity or my ability to enjoy that continuity. And Jay, I do kind of look at the silver lining there. I am more excited for, more diverse content that caters to a specific audience. Like if we can get more horror content, more violent stuff, like that was kind of my hope for the spotlight. So that's the one particular banner that I think runs the risk of getting a little murky. Like we just got this one and now it's all being lumped under Marvel TV. It probably should have just been Marvel TV from the beginning, kind of like I think Matt, you said there. But this is not a first for Marvel. They've actually been trying to do stuff like this for a really long time. I think back in 2008 when, Iron Man had already come out. Right around 2009, we got that Punisher Warzone movie, and that came out under the Marvel Knights banner. So that was supposed to be the first of like movies that were more adult-oriented, more violent, and that was the first and only of those films. So I think I kind of agree with you, Matt. In the great scheme of things, this is not going to amount to much.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can have your cake and eat it too, though. Like, I mean, you can, because if you make a Moon Knight show, you probably want that character. I mean, he's played by Oscar Isaac. Like, you probably want him to show up in a movie at some point. So, like, you can't run from that necessarily. You want to connect it to the wider universe. But at the same time, like, you can sell to a creative person. I think sometimes the connectivity thing can kind of scare creatives off a little bit. Like, hey, you got to make this show, but like we need you to cover this, this, and this, and you can't do this, this, and this. And there's like all these stipulations on it. And that can feel, I mean, that has been sort of a detractor in the industry for a long time with Marvel, is sort of feeling like you have to, and Feige is good at walking that line, but still you can't run from that there are certain limitations on what you can and can't do, and characters that you can and can't use and things like that. But with this, you can pitch it to creatives. You can say like, hey, you got an idea, come pitch it to us, let us hear it. You don't really have to connect it to anything if you don't want to, just sort of stay away from this and this, and you've got this like wider pasture that you can play with. And I think you'll see a lot more people maybe get to cut their teeth on some of these shows and talent behind the camera more than in front of the camera, in terms of like getting to experiment a little bit more than what we're used to with Marvel. And I think if that is the route that you can kind of take with this, like that's an exciting thing to kind of get this idea of like, even somebody, I mean, even like, hey, I got this idea for this like super obscure, hilarious character. I want to make a show about it. Under this, like theoretically, it doesn't have to be universe altering. You can do that as a one-off, and it can be what it is, and a couple little connections here and there, and we can do it, So I think in some respect that is a positive spin on the whole thing, or a positive way of looking at it, I guess.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree. But if Moon Knight does not make some sort of transition to the films, Feige's got some splaining to do, because he said that.
Yeah, I want that bad. All right. HBO's streaming service Max released a teaser trailer for the upcoming Dune television spinoff, Dune Prophecy. The show is described as taking place 10,000 years before the events that lead to Paul Atreides' rise to emperor, and will follow two Harkonnen sisters as they work to establish the Bene Gesserit. Inspired by the book Sisterhood of Dune, the show has mostly been kept under wraps until now. Can any of us stand up to the power of the Bene Gesserit?
Probably not. I have mixed feelings about this show. I have not read Sisterhood of Dune, but for something that's supposed to take place 10,000 years before the movies we've seen, it looks exactly the same. And it bothered me. The whole trailer was like, wait, wouldn't things have changed rather drastically in 10,000 years? Like, the costuming looks the same, the sets look the same, the aesthetic of the show looks like 10,000 years later. And I just find that to be a really odd creative choice. Like, if you have this time frame, wouldn't you want to do something different? And maybe it's a cost issue, and maybe it'll be explained, but it's the only thing that I can keep thinking about after seeing this trailer, because it bothered me a lot. I mean, we're going to watch it for sure, but I just think I just don't know what we're expecting from it.
That's interesting that you point out the visual continuity there, Haley, because that certainly was there, but it's not really what I honed in on. But you bring up the time frame there, 10,000 years, and you're absolutely right. We should see some difference in the culture and the costuming and just the layout and the architecture and what have you. So that's a good point. And I had somewhere along the line, I had forgotten Mark Strong was going to appear in this thing. So it was kind of great to see him in the military garb. It did remind me of Patrick Stewart as Gurney Halleck in the 1984 film just a little bit, which is not a bad thing. It was kind of nice to have that visual reminder there as well. But I'm thinking about the time frame as well. And I'm a Dune fan, but I am by no means a Dune expert, so I'd have to go back and kind of do my research. But if I'm not mistaken, without getting into spoilers too much, that time frame, one of the aspects that the Denis Villeneuve films have not really delved into is this is a world where there are no thinking machines. There's no AI, no artificial intelligence or anything like that. So there was an event in the universe called the Butlerian Jihad. I know in the books that was explored a lot by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson rather than Frank Herbert himself. So, fans kind of, they're on the fence. Some people are purists and only take, Frank's works, but some people will incorporate Brian's as well. But I think as this universe expands, we will probably see more and more of that supplemental material incorporated. But thinking again about the visual continuity, I look at the logo and I think they went to some lengths to be evocative of the film logo, but also be distinctly different. So I'm wondering what they're trying to broadcast there. Are they trying to say this can be a part of the films if you want it to be, but it doesn't have to be? I don't know. That's just kind of where my mind went. It felt like, they kind of want to have their cake and eat it too, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder about Dune as a franchise. It obviously as a film franchise is what it is. It's huge, obviously, but I think a big part of that is the fact that it's has this scale, and people go to see it in the theater because of the scale. And I sort of wonder about how that will translate to Max. I think people who are obviously fans of the thing will follow over to Max, but at the same time, are people that are going for the spectacle on the screen and the experience of it all, which a lot of people went and saw Dune for the experience of it all and the IMAX and all that type of stuff. Are they going to make that jump for a 10,000 year prequel over to Max? And I don't have an answer to that. I think you can look at it in a positive or negative way, but I think that's the biggest question for me is what are we going to do with it as a franchise? If this works, I mean, I guess the sky's the limit. I guess you could keep doing spinoffs if you wanted to, but if it doesn't really necessarily attract a lot of attention or streaming numbers or whatever, or even if it's poorly reviewed, then you're kind of getting into territory of maybe this is just a film franchise. So I'm interested to see that, I guess. Again, I don't have an answer to that question. I'm just kind of interested to see how the audience follows over to Max, or if they do.
I think we talked a lot when we were doing the coverage on Bingers, Scotty, Bill, Ashley, and I, about how much farther do you want to go with Denis Villeneuve's Dune, because the storyline gets really weird. It's so weird that it's nobody wants to see that on screen. So it is at least smart that they went backwards, rather than, trying to encroach on his territory. But it will be interesting to see its streaming success, because we talked about Dune as kind of this niche property. Yes, it's had very successful box offices, but the audiences that were going to see it were kind of a very specific audience. So yeah, I don't know if they'll follow over to this or not. And they've been so quiet about it. This trailer was just kind of out of nowhere.
That's
And
a
if
fair
you didn't
point.
know it was coming, you're probably like, I'm sorry, what? It's like jump scare.
Well, a lot of people, when they see these types of like first looks or first trailers, that is their first knowledge of that a thing is coming out. People who don't follow the news so closely. So a lot of people, it's always that way. This is always their first thing, you know? So getting quiet can be a good thing. Okay, up next, moviegoers probably should have bought a second ticket for themselves and their imaginary friends last weekend, as John Krasinski's new film, If, didn't quite reach expectations with a $35 million opening in the U.S. Although this means it took first place at the box office, the movie cost $110 million to make, and a global box office of $55 million is still a stumble. There may be hope yet for the kid-centered flick, with a lot of schools across the country ready to enter the summer break. Is there more summer box office heartbreak in store for upcoming films, or will we be surprised by the thin slate of films?
All right, I got to own up. I'm guilty this weekend. This was one of the few weekends where I did not go see any opening movies, and it's not because
Give me your AMC A-lister card right now.
Revoked.
Yeah. And it's not because I don't want to see If. I do want to see If, and I will see If eventually, probably this weekend. But I was just a little too busy last weekend, and the word of mouth and the reviews haven't been incredibly strong. They haven't been bad, but it's just been kind of muted. And a lot of what I've heard is that this is kind of a family-friendly film that leans more towards the adult themes towards the end. So if you've got kids and you're planning on taking, maybe do some research, look into some reviews. I don't know any specifics there, but for my own purposes, that actually excites me a little bit more and makes me more interested to check this thing out. But I will say I noticed some of the headlines out there that the trades that do box office reporting, and people were putting headlines out there that If dethroned Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and that's the only reason that they spun it that way, is because they wanted to use that wordplay, dethrone. So I respect it. But I see what you're doing, because this is not a win. And it really does make me look back at not last weekend because we had Kingdom, but the weekend prior. But the weekend prior to that is when we were talking about the Fall Guy. And at the time of this recording, Fall Guy is now available on digital, not 3 weeks since it released. It should have been a blockbuster to kick off the summer, and this is what's happening. So it's just super disappointing. This is not the way to tell Hollywood, or I guess it is the way to tell Hollywood, but people are constantly complaining about a lack of new IP, and maybe that's not the case with the Fall Guy per se, but If certainly is fresh property, not based on anything. Yeah, it's got some similarities to Foster's Home for Imaginary Kids, but you got to speak with your wallets, people. So get out there, check out some movies.
We continue to see the effects of the strikes, I think, and is definitely contributing to why there are so few blockbusters this summer, I think. And if you look at what's coming out next, it's the Garfield movie, which I have no idea what the level of hype for that is. I kind of feel like it's going to fall on its face. Every trailer I see of it, I'm like, what is this? What are we doing here? And then the Furiosa movie coming out, I think will probably do really well because they've been just marketing the ever-loving stuff out of it. So I think we can definitely attribute a lot of this to the strikes, because a lot of these movies I'm just like, these just aren't my thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah. The box office is just in a weird place, and Scotty, I think you nailed it. It's not. It's we're constantly surprised at what's doing well and what's not. We're always thinking well, this movie's probably not going to catch on, and then it becomes an event and people want to see it, and all of a sudden it does high numbers. But then we talk about a film well, this one seems exciting, it seems like a new thing, or it seems like a continuation of a franchise which people have traditionally loved, and they're not really meeting expectations. And so we're in a weird place. And I think it's the strike. It's also how much our habits really changed around the theater over the last 4 or 5 years. A lot of it has to do with streaming too. I mean, I know I'm thinking about a movie like Elemental, which we talked about a lot last year. It was a Pixar movie. It came out, had a bad opening weekend, and people talked about, well, this is the death of Pixar or whatever. But then it kind of had some solid weekends because like families don't really go on opening weekend to pack the theater. They kind of see it when they can see it. People are getting out of school. They're looking for something to do on the weekends. It's getting hot outside, all that type of stuff, right? And you just start to see the steady piling up of money. And then it hit Disney Plus, and it became like the most viewed thing on Disney Plus. So like people were watching it. There was interest. It just there wasn't like the level of interest in the theater that there has traditionally been. And a lot of that, I think, can be attributed to streaming. I mean, you think about a movie like if I want to take my family and I have 2 or 3 kids, it's a lot of money. Like you're talking about like, $8 or $9 a ticket. You're talking about food. You're talking about, the snacks, the drinks, like all that stuff. Like it's like $50-$60 to go to take a family to the theater. Like a lot of families are just willing to say, I'll wait it out. I'll wait till it comes on some type of streaming thing. I might not even know which one it comes on, but like I'll find it when it gets there. So it's we're in a weird place right now, especially with the kids movie. It's just like a really interesting area you kind of have to nail. It's not necessarily a sure thing like the Super Mario Brothers movie was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just think this movie didn't excite me personally. Like I saw the trailers and I was like, hey, that seems like a pretty good idea. But like the trailer didn't entertain me and I just wasn't really that interested. You mentioned John Krasinski, or like this is written by John Krasinski, right?
And directed.
And you said it was very similar to a book. Is that right?
There's a Cartoon Network cartoon series, obviously on Cartoon Network, called Foster's Home for Imaginary Kids. I only saw an episode or two. I remember my younger brother being more into it. It was a little after my time, but yeah.
It kind of disturbs me after like a lot of sort of allegations around Quiet Place being very similar to another book, right? I
do remember hearing some buzz about that, but I don't remember the specifics.
There was a book very similar with this monsters of the same ability and sort of, I think it may have even had like some similar family dynamics and stuff in the book. I'd have to delve into it more. Those kind of allegations get tossed around a lot and sometimes they're true, but like, yeah, just that worries me about. And I also when I saw a breakdown once of his Some Good News that he came out with. You remember that?
I remember that. Yeah, during the
there
pandemic.
Was like, I follow a show called Some More News, and they used to do a segment called Some Good News, and then John Krasinski came out with Some Good News, and then after like 10 weeks, sold it for $1 billion or whatever, and he came on. It was just like super mad. So the guy who does Some More News about like, yeah, John Krasinski did our segment. Like we did this exact segment. And then he started pointing out that like also these other 15 people do the same show on YouTube, and he literally like kind of patented the idea of good news and sold it for $1 billion. And I was like, okay. Yeah, that's sort of skeezy a little bit, but like it's entertainment and like ideas kind of fluctuate and bounce around the sphere. I just worry if like a lot of his ideas are too reminiscent of other things. I don't know enough about the one that you're saying if might be like similar to.
Sounds like it could be a big tuna in a little pond.
All right. Next up, hot off the heels of an incredibly well-received first season of X-Men 97, Marvel Studios seems to have found the voice for their live-action X-Men in screenwriter Michael Leslie. Leslie's writing credits include Assassin's Creed, The Hunger Games, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, as well as the upcoming Now You See Me 3. While both parties are still in talks, if the addition pans out, it will be the most significant step to actualizing the X-Men in the MCU since Disney's acquisition of Fox in 2019. Considering the timing of the talks and the credits to his name, is Michael Leslie a name we expect to remember?
If he's going to pin X-Men, then I hope so, because I hope it's really good. Marvel is all in on X-Men right now. They are just really going hard with these properties. X-Men 97, super popular, super well done. I've talked already about the relaunch of the comics that they're doing. And yes, they relaunch comics all the time, but they're going really hard with X-Men, with big name writers at Marvel Comics, and then these limited series too. And so I think that this is the next iteration for the MCU as well. 2019 simultaneously feels not that long ago and extremely long ago somehow, but I know when it happened, the acquisition happened, I was like, we'll see the X-Men in about 10 years in the MCU. And I think that I'll be close to correct about that, because if they're just now talking to somebody to write the movie, and I think they're going to really take their time with X-Men and really make sure it's really well done, lives up to people's expectations for super beloved characters. I mean, we all have our favorite characters in the MCU, but to me, as I've gone through this journey of being a fan of these things, nothing speaks to people quite like the X-Men does. And I know that Feige, having gotten his start back in the day on the X-Men movies, I think he'll really want to treat this right. So get excited, but you're going to be waiting just a little bit still.
Indeed. Well, I think that if he's pinning the X-Men movie, though, one thing that Feige mentioned, and plans have definitely changed since then, but in 3 years ago at some event, Feige was talking about how it's going to be a while before we see the X-Men, but you're going to be seeing mutants sooner than you think. And we've already seen Kamala Khan brought out as a mutant, and now we're getting Monica Rambeau jumping over and seeing some X-Men, and we're getting Wolverine jumping into the MCU with Deadpool. So I think that it's possible we may not get this X-Men movie till, like you said, 2029, but it's very possible that we
it's
will
only
get
5 years away.
Yeah.
I know. You said 10 years. I'm like, yeah, you might be right, but it's very possible they will have a couple standalone X-Men movies between now and then, or some more integration of the characters into the sort of overall MCU, or just the idea of mutants emerging.
Sure.
Maybe we'll get some villains that are mutants or whatever, and then the X-Men will sort of bring all of that together.
My first and most immediate question, and I know it's not the right question, but it's, what the hell did Bo DeMaio do? Why?
I was talking about this yesterday on source pages, because I think it must have been something personally, because the way they split, everything seemed fairly amicable from both parties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's still been, on social media as the show's been, it's now had run its course, and he's been kind of chiming in all along the way, and still seems, very pleased with it. But, I did not expect him to make the transition from the animated series to the movie per se, but I thought, certainly he'd be a consultant or something like that with the extremely positive reception here. But yeah, it's just still so weird to have no idea what he did, and we'll probably never know, and that's okay. I can be okay with that. We're not a tabloid show, but I just, I had to bring that up.
I want to know.
I do.
Speak
honestly,
for yourself.
Yeah.
We talked about it yesterday on MCU because someone wrote in some feedback about it, so I did a little bit of research on their feedback.
Okay.
And it's all rumor. It's all speculation.
Yeah, nothing was ever confirmed by anybody.
There's been a leak through an insider on a podcast, that Jeff Insider, Snyder person said that someone within the production said he was a nightmare to work with.
Sure.
But maybe, but also that just the level of it might be that he's terrible to work with, but not a bad guy. You know what I mean? Some people are just really hard to work with because their creative force is too strong or whatever. I mean, a lot of the guys I love, it comes out later, everyone on set hated them because they had such a strong vision and held to it, and sometime in an asshole manner. But then another one that is going around the internet, and this is apparently true, but not confirmed that this is the reason, is he apparently has an OnlyFans.
Oh.
Yeah, but it was a whatever.
That's the thing. It's not
Disney.
A sexual OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Disney.
But still, that thing.
A Disney-fied OnlyFans?
Yeah, it's a Disney-fied OnlyFans. But apparently it's an OnlyFans that just, you can have OnlyFans for anything, just like you can have a Patreon.
Sure.
It's just a payment platform, but it has a certain reputation. And it came out that he had an OnlyFans for his art, for his
I don't
stuff that he was
think
producing.
was it.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but that's the two reasons that are being kicked all around the internet, is that he's bad to work with. I think bad to work with is more likely, but I think the OnlyFans thing is funny. Yeah. Also, every article that talks about the OnlyFans thing has a big shirtless picture of him, which is just super misleading, because that's not apparently...
Bad journalism.
Clickbait.
Yeah, it's total clickbait. Total clickbait.
To bring it back to the X-Men, I'm sorry for derailing us there for a little bit, but Matt, you were kind of talking about how there is the potential for them to seed some characters and just the idea of mutants, and they've already done that a little bit. But I also brush against that a little bit because I think you look at X-Men 97, and while I'm somebody, I had familiarity with these characters. I watched the classic animated series. I'd seen all the movies. I did not go back to revisit that animated series in preparation for this, and I know seeing the responses on social media and the internet, a lot of people went into X-Men 97 as their kind of first foray with the X-Men, and it works. So if they just wanted to roll out an X-Men film without any prerequisite viewing or baggage, they totally could, because it works. This show shows that you can do it. You can balance and give attention to all of these characters and do it well.
1000%. I mean, that's the 2000s X-Men movie. They did it in 2000 and it worked well enough, Like, it's not great, but for its time,
it was
one of the best movies, best comic movies we've
I think it's
ever
a solid movie, but I do think even from that first one, Wolverine is kind of being, touted as the main character because he was the most popular. Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, if you look at X-Men 97, the firch episode's very much a Cyclops episode. And now the entire season, you could say, is kind of Cyclops and Jean Grey focused. But that's the thing about any sort of story you put out, either episodically or as a movie, like, it kind of needs a focus to character. We've talked about that a lot. And I think, like,
no doubt,
any X-Men, if you introduce a full team, you're going to have to pick and choose who's on screen more and who the story is built around. With the original X-Men, it was like giving Rogue and Wolverine the sort of, like, Wolverine's your hero character, and Rogue was the character that you sort of got to see through the series through her eyes or whatever. See the X-Men through her eyes because she's new to the group or whatever. Yeah. So there's always going to be that element, I think, in good storytelling.
Sure.
But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it's possible to just introduce a team like crazy. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy. I think is probably one of the best examples of that.
Of course. Yeah. And I know Eternals is not everybody's favorite. I don't hate the Eternals, but I think they can look at that as an example about, an approach to that. And did it work as well as they wanted to? No, not necessarily, but I think it really worked for some of the characters in that film. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the casting for this is going to be fascinating as it starts to happen, because you got to cast a lot of people, and they got to be able to stick around and pop up. I mean, you don't want to just do one. You're casting a Fantastic Four, like, you want them to pop up again. You got to keep that team together. We've already seen the Avengers go their separate ways, so, like, what are you going to do about that? So you've got this universe, I mean, with a lot of pieces. Like, you've got the Avengers, now you're adding the Fantastic Four, now you're going to add the X-Men. Like, these are all separate corners, but, like, theoretically, like, you want them to cross over. You got all the street level people, you got all the cosmic stuff. Like, will we see those characters come together in some capacity? Like, if so, you really got to have your ducks in the row in terms of, like, who you're casting and how young they are, and, like, can they hold together a franchise and all of that. So I'm interested in the writer. I'm definitely more interested in the director, though. Like, when we finally get that news, which we don't have yet, but when we finally hear who's directing it, I think that's going to be big. Like, that's going to really open up the conversation about, like, what type of movie is coming together here. And I would imagine it's going to be some time probably before we get a solidified director for this thing. But it's moving. Like, there's a lot of momentum around this right now. To already have a writer, like, it's getting off the ground, and the conversation's there.
Yeah. They should bribe James Gunn back for this one.
Oh, he'd be fantastic for an X-Men movie.
He would. Yeah. He would be so good for X-Men.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
It's not happening.
No way. He's got too much to do at DC. Well, guys, we are Multiverse News. If you're listening, you probably know that already. It's in the corner of the screen. But if you want to support the show and you want to get an ad-free audio version of the show every week in a podcast feed, you can do that at patreon.com/Multiverse Newscast. So check out patreon.com/Multiverse Newscast. It's $4 a month, and you support the show, and you get ad-free access, and there's some Patreon polls and
do some giveaways from time to time.
That we do. So check out patreon.com/Multiverse News, and we'll be back in just a moment with the lightning round. Welcome back to Multiverse News. When you last saw Multiverse News, we were talking about the X-Men, and now it's time to talk about Some more Marvel. Our Spotify poll this week was: do you think the Agatha name changes were planned from the beginning? And we had a pretty good resounding win for no. Most of you said 59.6% said no, you don't think they were planned from the beginning, and 40% said yes. So it's a solid split. What's the vote here? What do you guys think?
I think no.
I agree. I think no. I think it's giving them a lot of credit to think yes. I mean, that's like you're telling me somebody came in the room and they're like, listen, 2024 will finally reveal that this is Agatha
For 3
all along.
years, let's catfish them with different names. Yeah? All right, let's go. No.
I just think
not how marketing works.
Usually the simplest explanation in these cases is the right explanation.
Yeah.
You know how it worked for that movie Day After, or what is it, The Edge of Tomorrow? Let's do that.
Tomorrow. Well, that wasn't even, they didn't even change the names a bunch. They just gave it a terrible name and put it in theaters that way. They changed it after the fact.
It was called Edge of Tomorrow, but all of the marketing used like live, die, repeat. And even like on the DVD and Blu-ray, it's like live, die, repeat in bold lettering. So everybody thinks the title is Live, Die, Repeat. But it's based on a manga, and the title of the manga was All You Need Is Kill. So it's like this joke that there are 3 titles for this movie. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a good movie, though.
It's a great movie, and Edge of Tomorrow is like universally the worst name for it. Like the other 2 names are so much better. All You Need Is Kill is so good, but it does sound so schlocky. I can see why like a Tom Cruise movie wouldn't want to be called All You Need Is Kill. It sounds more like a Jason Statham movie. But like
Brad Pitt killing him softly or something like that.
Yeah. All right, we'll dive into our lightning round. You guys know how this works. I'm going to read a story, and then if you'd like to comment on that story, you claim it by buzzing in with your name, and then throughout the entire lightning round, you get 1 rebuttal, and you might sneak in a tiny bit or 2, but I'm watching. Up first, Poker Face and Russian Doll star Natasha Lyonne has joined the cast of Fantastic Four in an undisclosed role.
Jay, doesn't matter unless I know who she's playing at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't get... we've heard about Malkovich. We've heard about, at least we know who's playing Galactus, but, like, we're hearing these mystery roles, and, hey, I like her. I mean, she's a good actress, but, I'm just not that excited to know who she's playing. But it is fun to watch this cast fill out.
Rebuttal. Given Jay Scotty mentioned last week the idea of this being not just a Fantastic Four movie, but like a fully fledged Marvel universe that is dying off, and I've been obsessing with that idea ever since he mentioned it, and I really like the idea of her casting as like Black Widow, for instance. And like the idea that some of these characters that are being cast are fleshing out more of the Marvel universe, not necessarily Fantastic Four characters. They may be characters that are destined to die, but like it's kind of a fun idea that they could be filling out all those other roles that maybe even roles that were filled by other actors before.
All right, tiny butt. So I know she's known for her distinct raspy voice. So again, just going to throw it out there, Herbie. But immediately I go towards Alicia Masters. That was just like the first name that popped up to me. That's Ben Grimm's blind girlfriend in the comics. And again, if they're going to go for a more faithful version of the comic book character in this outing, I think she's a great character actor to choose. If she's going to lean into the more zany and otherworldly aspects of this character, she's a great pick. But that's just pure speculation.
Fun. And she's really good at like so that's think of Russian Doll, and like in that where she like dies over and over. I was just thinking of her really good at playing a death scene. So like if she's part of the world exploding while Ben Grimm is being pulled into another universe, I could definitely see her playing that. Lionsgate is developing a John Wick spin-off movie around Donnie Yen's assassin character, Kane. Yen will reprise his John Wick Chapter 4 role in the untitled project set to shoot in Hong Kong in 2025. The franchise expanding film will, with no director yet announced, will follow the events of John Wick 4 as Kane has been freed from his obligations to the High Table.
Scotty, well... this effectively spoils the last scene that we had for John Wick 4.
Yeah, good point.
It's been a while, right?
It's cool. I like Donnie Yen. He's a great action star, and John Wick is a great franchise. So if they want to continue that character, I'm definitely down for it.
Sweet. 1996 golf comedy Happy Gilmore is officially getting a sequel at Netflix, with Adam Sandler returning to reprise his role. Matt, don't ruin my childhood, Adam Sandler. Don't do
He's
it.
just getting that Netflix money.
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Netflix loves Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
And I love like a gritty older man reboot. I'm just kidding. This won't be gritty at all. But I love these like come back 20 years later and play the character again roles. But I am nervous because I haven't seen anything exciting from Adam Sandler in a long time.
Yeah.
I feel like most of his movies have kind of fallen flat, except for his dramatic roles. So it's like I feel like his comedy movies apparently make money and they do okay, but they keep the budgets really small, and it's like it's just a bunch of him and his friends getting together to like go to Hawaii or whatever all the time. Like it just feels like I don't know that he's taken his comedies that seriously lately, or he's kind of lost his comedy voice, in my opinion. So if he's going to revisit this character that was very beloved in my childhood, I'd like him to like bring his A game, is all I'm saying. I want you to bring your A game, Adam Sandler. Amazon's Marvel drama, Silk Spider Society from Sony Pictures Television is no longer moving forward at the streamer, but Sony does plan to shop the series to another studio or streaming service.
Haley, I want to see what they do with Noir first at Amazon to really reserve judgment. But Sony, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You better be shopping it to Disney Plus. Okay? Okay.
I don't think
they're like,
Plus
you like
interesting.
it's Spider-Man's adjacent. You like that, right? You eat this up.
It is. Silk is
Maybe
a cool
we
character.
won't.
Yeah, Silk is
But
badass.
it's hard to just throw you into Silk, I think.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sony Pictures announced last week that I Know What You Did Last Summer, a reboot of the film with the same name as the original 1997 horror slasher, is set for theatrical release domestically on July 18th, 2025. Jennifer Caitlin Robinson will direct, and Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. are currently in early talks to return.
Scotty, at the time of this recording, it is May 21st, 2024. So July 18th, 2025. Yikes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe give it a little more time in the oven there, please.
I bet. Scotty, you could be in this movie because you got multiple names.
Okay, that's right. Good call.
Everyone has 3 names. I like it. I think we know who the killer is on this podcast.
Oh.
We know what you did last summer, Jay Scotty.
Well, now I have to kill you.
Oh my God, you said
It's all been leading to this moment.
Finally, the season finale for season 2 of the groundwork is being laid for the season finale of Multiverse News when Jay Scotty goes on a killing spree.
I told you to stay classy. Just couldn't stay classy, could you?
Or we just make our movie that we came up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Let's do it. Last week, Disney announced that Hulu is teaming up with the estate of author James Clavell to extend the FX series Shogun for 2 additional seasons. A writer's room is currently being assembled. Shogun is currently the most viewed show in FX's history.
Scotty, I know we talked about this one a little bit last week with the possibility for a second season, but now knowing that a 3rd season is a possibility as well. Like Haley, I think you mentioned that James Clavell had a whole series of books that took place in this era and this location in history. So yeah, I guess there is source material there. But what really sticks out to me is the fact that this was the most viewed show in FX's history because yeah, it's a phenomenal show. I think it's appointment viewing, but I didn't think it was all that accessible for a casual viewer or your average viewer. Like this, not necessarily a show I would recommend to my mom, but it seems like it was everybody and their mother was watching this thing based on that. So good on them.
Tiny but it seemed to really capture the zeitgeist of sort of the geeky. Like I didn't watch this, but I heard about it in every one of my normal sort of geeky channels that I follow, and even on this network, almost every time I was on with any of you guys, we're talking about Shogun. Shogun was really popular among that sort of zeitgeist, and like there wasn't much else on at the moment to sort of compete with it. So I think Shogun got not to like take anything away from how good the show is, but I think like there was more motivation for people to overcome some of the barriers of it being maybe less accessible because there's just not anything else that was appointment TV going on at that moment. And I think it kind of grabbed some of those viewers up.
I think it filled in a Game of Thrones type role for a lot of people because it's very similar tone-wise, but I stand by my statement last week that I'm just not sure it'll continue to hold up.
I think weekly release helped it a little bit too. Like if you drop it all at once, I don't know if it gets the level of hype that it had because the episodes 100%. Are so long and like heavy and there's so much going on. It'd be a hard all at once binge. So I think they really played it really well. It was just like steadily building. I mean, the viewership increased every week. Like people were jumping on. So it really hit at the right time.
Yeah. Edgar Wright is currently in talks to direct Barbarella for Sony. The original 1968 Barbarella film starred Jane Fonda and has since achieved cult classic status. Sydney Sweeney will star.
Haley.
Come on, Haley. Come on.
I'm sorry. Sydney Sweeney is not a good actress. I'm just saying it. I just haven't seen her be good. I know everybody says she was great in Euphoria, and that's great, but I think that might be the extent of her range. And I don't like it. She looks the part. I'll give you that.
Edgar Wright must have really loved Anyone But You because he's doing The Running Man with Glenn Powell, and now he's doing Barbarella with Sydney Sweeney.
That's a good call.
Glenn Powell is the only good thing about that movie. Have anybody else watched it?
Anyone But You? Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, it was pretty throwaway, but I had fun with it, I guess.
It was bad.
You're wrong, D. Scotty. It was bad.
My opinion is that it was bad.
It wasn't great. I mean, like I said, it was pretty throwaway, but there were some laughs in there.
Yeah.
From Glenn Powell.
True. Gata had some, but I like Dave a lot anyway. So.
Who?
Gata was his friend with the dreads that was at the
son
at the wedding.
Yeah.
All right, the documentary Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story, which DC Studios has said so many Sony stories in a row. I got just started saying Sony out of habit. Which DC
starts with
Studios,
an S, it's Sony. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Which DC Studios, HBO Documentary Films, and CNN Films acquired out of the Sundance Film Festival this year, will get a special theatrical release on September 21st, 2024.
Jay, there was a lot of buzz coming out of Sundance around this documentary, and that was the next question was like, how are we going to be able to watch it? Because people were really interested in seeing it after people came out and said like that it was very powerful and it told a very powerful story about Christopher Reeve and the character and how like this thing has defined our culture in some ways and things like that. Like that it was very well made, and man, like people jumped on it, like studios jumped on it to try to get a chance to be able to scoop it up and stream it. So for it to get a theatrical release is pretty cool. I would imagine that you'll see it on probably Max by the end of the year, but I think it'll be a cool documentary to catch in the theater for people who are interested in theater viewing.
Absolutely. Universal and Blumhouse have announced a handful of release date changes for their upcoming film schedule. Five Nights at Freddy's 2, FNAF 2, has received an official theatrical release date of December 5th, 2025. Megan 2.0 has shifted back a month from May 16th to June 27th of 2025, and The Black Phone 2, which was set to open on June 27th, 2025, will now go out months later on October 17th, 2025.
Scotty. All right. Yeah. It seems like horror has successfully made the transition to being a year-round commodity. So, yeah, they had to shift to make some room for each other. It's good stuff.
Longtime X-Man Simon Kinberg.
He wishes.
Longtime X-Men producer Simon Kinberg is in talks to produce a new Star Trek feature for Paramount Pictures. This is the prequel film currently with Toby Haynes attached to direct. If all goes well, sources tell The Hollywood Reporter that Paramount is prepared to sign Kinberg to produce the future of the film side of Star Trek. Matt, I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like the fact that he was successfully made a bunch of movies happen as a producer makes me happy. And I think that would be nice to see in the Star Trek universe, because for a while it's been like, this movie's coming. Maybe soon. And actors are like, yeah, I'm attached, but I don't know when it's coming. And like, nobody knows when these movies are coming. So it would be nice for them to actually like somehow get a production schedule together and make some Star Trek movies. The Jim Henson Company is making Grendel, a live-action monster movie of the classic epic poem Beowulf. Jeff Bridges will play the titular character with a supporting cast that includes Dave Bautista, Sam Elliott, Bryan Cranston, and others.
Scotty, okay, we were talking about this one off air as we were preparing the show, and I didn't recognize that this was being done by the Jim Henson Company, so this takes my excitement from being pretty muted to now I am definitely excited, because Jim Henson and the Jim Henson Company are the masters of puppetry and bringing practical creatures to the screen. So we did have that 2007 version of Beowulf where Ray Winston was doing the weird Polar Express thing. But yeah, no, now that I've learned more about this, a combination of the talent plus the practical puppetry that's going to be on display there, yeah, this is going to be one to keep an eye on for sure. Yeah,
it sounds like a lot of fun. Get that like labyrinth vibe going for Beowulf. I could totally see that.
Without the bulge, but yeah.
No, man, you can't have labyrinth vibe without the bulge. That's just not the labyrinth vibe.
Okay.
During their recent upfront presentation, Netflix announced that their show, The Three Body Problem, will receive additional episodes to finish out the story that season 1 started.
Jay, this show was streamed a lot. It probably surpassed expectations for Netflix because they did not renew it for a season 2 like immediately, which is what they usually do. But their choice of words was interesting. They didn't call this a season 2, and the person who made this show came out recently this week and tried to clarify that this is not really a traditional season 2. It's that they started a story and they ended the story with season 1, but that there's still a little bit of story that they want to tell. And so Netflix is giving them the opportunity to have a handful of episodes to finish out that story. So if you're a fan of that and you like the first season, that's really good news.
In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Jerry Bruckheimer confirmed that he is actively developing 2 Pirates of the Caribbean films for Disney. One is a reboot film with Jeff Nathanson writing the script, and another is being written by Birds of Prey writer Christina Hodson and will star Margot Robbie.
Haley, I think let these dogs lie, Jerry. I just don't think there's excitement for the Pirates franchise right now, and he wants Johnny Depp back, but of course that's all contingent on 100,000 other different things, and so I don't know. It just feels like he keeps trying to make fetch happen, and maybe it's not going to happen.
Blasphemy, Haley! You can't let an IP die. You have to keep them going.
It lives on at Disney World, doesn't it?
Pirates of the Caribbean, Sleeping Dogs Don't Lie.
That's the next title right there. That's a pretty good title. Good. If you told me that was the title, I'd be like, of course it is. Like, that makes total sense. We have talked on this podcast multiple times about how Jerry Bruckheimer just talks, and like if the person interviewing him just lets him talk, that he will keep saying things. And I bet Disney was so mad when they heard this because they asked him like, well, would you bring Johnny Depp back? Because that's the question you would ask Jerry Bruckheimer, because he, like a lot of people would be like, well, listen, blah, 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 blah. Like, like they just like give you the political answer. Jerry Bruckheimer went, if it was up to me, I would. Like, I really want to work with him, but it's not up to me. And it's like, Disney's like, why would you say that? Like, because it's up to them, and they don't want Johnny Depp in a movie right now with the just what's happened with Johnny Depp over the last couple of years. And apparently he was a nightmare on the Pirates 2 set. It's always been the rumor. And so, I mean, it's, I don't know. I'm with you, Haley. Like, is there a lot of people beating down the door for Pirates? Probably not. There's probably less if Johnny Depp's not in it, because that's why people like that thing, I think. Like, he's kind of the main character of that whole thing. So, yeah, it's weird. We're in a weird space with that. But, hey, we're going to get a couple. So, buckle up.
Is Margot Robbie supposed to be playing like a Johnny Depp style pirate? Is she supposed to be a pirate character? Or is she supposed to be a someone else? I could totally see her embracing that and doing it really well. Like her work as Harley Quinn is awesome. I'd kind of love to see her be a pirate. Okay, that's our news for the night. Let's go around the circle here and tell everybody where they can find your stuff online, any projects you're doing right now. Haley Hobbs.
Well, if you haven't gotten enough X-Men talk, and we know you haven't, Brian and I just kind of geeked out about X-Men 97 on Source Pages last night, and that episode is live. We're also talking Doctor Who with Karen and Liz Klein, so if you want some fun reviews of the current Doctor Who season that's on Disney+, we're doing that. Yeah.
Sweet. J. Scotty St. Clair.
Yeah, over on the Bingers Assemble feed, you can hear my voice a lot between the Planet of the Apes coverage and the Mad Max coverage that's just getting out there. So check that out. And then Animation Deliberation, the podcast where we take action animation and cartoons seriously, but not too seriously.
And Jay Sisson.
Yeah, weekly I'm at Commute the Podcast, where you can learn 3 interesting things in 20 minutes. We did a rebroadcast episode this week, but we'll be back with a new one next Monday.
Sweet. And you can find me all over the Stranded Panda podcast universe, strandedpanda.com, bunch of podcasts there. Check them all out. All great people doing great work. So we'd love to have you check it out. And hey, if you like our little outro music, that's a song. Check out my music, Matthew Carroll on Spotify or Apple or whatever. That one's called My Baby's Gone. Yeah, never mentioned that.
You still on MySpace? You ever on MySpace?
I mean, I assume the account still exists.
Is MySpace still around? Hold on.
I don't know.
At least Tom's still there. Tom's not going anywhere.
Yeah, man.
It's taken a long time to load. I don't know if anything's going to be on the other end. Okay, it still exists. It's all music, though. But it still exists.
I think they transitioned to a music platform only at some point.
This is a whole other conversation. I got to get out of here. I'm going to derail the show.
Indeed.
I'm Xing this out right now.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you next week. Peace.
You stay classy, Multiverse. You better stay classy.
You stay classy or else.
Hey, thanks for listening to Multiverse News, or watching it, or whatever you're doing. Eyeballs or ear holes, whichever thing. We do this show every week, and we appreciate you listening. Strandedpanda.com is where you can find all of our podcasts. And thank you for listening. Check us out wherever you get podcasts. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the little bell icon, whatever you have on whatever service you're doing. Rate us, like us. We're really thirsty. That's what I'm saying.